Thank you very much, Paul. Commissioner for Architecture and the Built Environment, still the government's advisor on architecture, urban design and public space. I'll have to say that this presentation has almost nothing to do with CABE. This is about an earlier part of my life, and if these are international case studies, then this one is based on the fact that the past is another country. So what you're going to find is something contrasting to what we've just heard. I hope it's not too contrasting, but it's actually a different way of approaching things. The first thing is, most of you are too young to remember that there has been a Conservative government in this country before. It's worth saying that John Major had a regeneration programme called City Challenge, which ran from 1992 to 1998. It had these characteristics, lasted for 5 years per area. It was very focused on very tightly drawn boundaries. And I had the immense privilege to be chief executive of the one that ran in Hackney, in the Dalston area. And basically the idea was you produced a delivery plan and you agreed that with the government, and then you had 5 years to deliver it. You had £37.5 million, and you had to find something like 5 to 10 times that amount of money to go with it to invest in the area. And so in the case of the Hackney City Challenge company, a company was set up which was a partnership between the public sector, the private sector and the local community. Private sector varying from small local businesses up to Warburg's Bank. And they produced a delivery plan which I had the honour of delivering. And it was a real mix. It was commercial development, it was about local business support, it was about community projects, it was about new housing, about education in the area and about improving the environment. Now in those days, back in 1993, we were indeed concerned about digital technology, but you could, if you like, count the digits on one finger. We didn't have, in those days, enormous broadband networks, for example, that we could use. So one of the issues for us was how to start to create something particularly special in the south of the area in the orange box here, which is an emergent creative quarter. One of the reasons for talking to you today is that when we're looking at creative industries in London, I guess things may have moved on in the last 12 years, but actually in this part of London, what we did remains both politically contentious and very contentious at a neighbourhood level. And I'll come back to that later on. But just to give you a quick idea of what we were trying to achieve, when we'd finished, Sir Peter Hall wrote an excellent book called Cities in Civilization, which I recommend to you. What he looked at was the evolution of the way in which cities have found their economic niche, really since ancient times through to the present era. And he talked about, for example, the development of crafts in the Middle Ages, of industrial development in the 19th century, and moving on to the era of creative and digital arts in the 21st century. He was looking ahead, obviously. And he said this, he said that what we should be looking for is a new breed of high-tech bohemians who bring together both computer skills with storytelling and artistic flair. Now, I was really glad when he wrote the book, because that's actually exactly what we thought we were trying to do in the Shoreditch area through the City Challenge programme. What's interesting is the extent to which we might have achieved that and some of the consequences it had. Shoreditch, many of you will know it, but I don't know how many of you will have known it when it was like it is on your left. An area of manufacturing industry, the rag trade. This is a gas meter factory. And if any of you who slept on a Vono bed in your childhood, that's where they were made. So when the future of the area was considered in the County of London plan just at the end of the Second World War, it was natural that it should be kept as a manufacturing area. And I, as a young town planner, worked in that area for Hackney Council in the late 70s. And in those days, we were still defending the use of those buildings for what was then called general industry, that is manufacturing, when the demand for manufacturing had moved out of the area and out of London. So the plan, which became the initial development plan for Greater London, continued to be in force. And for us as planners, it was quite a struggle because we could actually see a lot of empty space, a lot of empty property. Now, in the early 80s, things started to change. One of my colleagues gave planning permission through rather deft means to Peter Ind, who set up the Bass Clef Jazz Club in the area. And very, very gradually over the next 10 years, an emergent group of artists started to come into the area and started to take over some of the old properties. So, for example, Michael Croft and others took this building in Hoxton Square, which is headed annexed here, And with the local authority, which owned it, they got it into use as temporary artist studios. There's some rather, how can I put it, the late Joshua Hoxton, rather an unusual individual. His art centred around death, and he ran a programme called The Fate Worse Than Death in Hoxton Square, which we actually funded in our early years until he sadly died. Apparently from experimenting with Victorian embalming fluid. I say it because this becomes relevant later on. So this was actually happening just as the City Challenge plan was being written. And I think with extraordinary adventurousness and foresight, the local authority decided that this was going to be one of the key themes of the City Challenge programme in conjunction with the local community. So these were some quite radical people. And what they were doing was really quite radical with, in those days, these days it would be, I guess, natural, but in those days it was quite unusual. Key point, it was very cheap. It didn't really cost you very much to rent floor space. Often it was transient, and it was really outside the mainstream. So the City Challenge programme was set up, and its premise in Hoxton was to invest in both people and place. I don't actually buy this question of is it about people or is it about places. I don't accept binary solutions. Actually, you need to have both. And a lot of it was actually about encouraging and supporting people who are already active in the area. So the circus space, many of you will know as the UK's preeminent, possibly at the moment only circus school. It varies from time to time. And they'd moved in from Islington and took over an old power station which the council owned in Hoxton Square. And they were one of our key initial projects. Getting that project going was very interesting. I was told not long after I became the chief executive that if I wanted a future career in the public service, I was told this by some civil servants, I'd be very wise not to support this project. Because it was so radical and out there. There were more piercings per square inch amongst the people who were promoting that project than I've ever seen. Interestingly, when we introduced the civil service to Warburg's Bank, who were one of the key backers of the project, their attitude changed totally. And I was quite entertained when the Millennium Dome got underway. One of the key things you'll know about, one of the best things about it was the show, which took place in the middle of the dome. Guess where they trained all the people who performed in that, out the circus space. But as you can see, there was more to it than that. We actually brought the circus space outdoors with public art and so on. So the idea here was to try and effect both a physical transformation and a transformation in the area, the way the area was seen. There was also a strong educational core to this programme. This is the Hackney Community College campus designed by Perkins Ogden and Colin Stansfield Smith. The whole purpose of this was to try and lift the spirits of the area, to try and raise people's aspirations. But it also contained in it a digital hub, which was the first collaboration we could find between a university and an FE college at the time. Very interesting again because the rules meant that the carpet changed where the Higher Education Funding Council's funding stopped and the Further Education Funding Council's funding started because they couldn't work together, they had to work through us. But please also notice the words, the Hackney Community College, the Shoreditch campus in Hoxton. That becomes important in a minute. But you'll notice also that it was beautifully adorned, that actually we used the local artists, the local craftspeople to adorn the campus, and that was very much Chrissy Farley, the principal's objective here. But there's a slight symbolism about the gate, because the little girl looking in there through the piece of art in the principal's quad symbolises both how attractive this place was, and also the fact that people saw a barrier. They saw a barrier between the local community and what was going on in the college. It wasn't supposed to be like that, it was a community college, but that was a perception. So in trying to embed the art and the crafts into the programme, we also in some ways set up a distance between what we were doing and what some of the local community felt about it. Right at the heart of this programme, we've heard a bit, I think, earlier on about the issue of heritage and about the way in which, for example, our great cultural collections form part of the need to create a creative London. The Jeffrey Museum, of course, those of you who don't know, is a wonderful, wonderful museum extended by Branson Coates. Their tradition is in the arts and crafts, and what happened here was that the people who ran the museum wanted to share what they knew about arts and crafts with the local craftspeople, and they wanted to bring them in. And this was a very important example for me, I think, of how you can look back at the great wealth of heritage